Welcome to the We Shape podcast.
Hey, girl.
I'm here with Nina and Tyler. We have a super fun guest tonight. I just want to call out.
Ooh, that's a different kind of show.
This is our first time doing kind of an evening podcast.
I like how we're calling it evening when it's like literally 6 o'clock. We're like, it's bedtime, y'all.
We do go to bed early, but we love making exceptions for special guests. So I've already let everybody know I'm going to be loopy. I am,
I took tomorrow off.
Yeah, yeah, you did.
Didn't you just say you went home and laid in bed for a little bit before you came here just to get like a little?
I might have done that. I got a little head start on my rest time.
Okay, this is a perfect opportunity. I'm gonna go for it, girl. I'm
sorry.
Are
you calling me out?
I'm just gonna do it real quick before we start.
Okay.
Nina goes to bed twice.
I do.
I love
single
falling
night. Asleep that much.
That I sometimes if I call her after 7:30, I'm worried. Like, is it round one? Because I don't want to wake her up. She's pregnant. She needs rest. But you always go to bed twice. What time do you first go to sleep?
What's your first rest?
My first rest, I call it my napetizer, which I stole off the internet, so I can't take credit for that. But I go to bed. I get in bed around like 7 o'clock normally, and I generally am asleep by around like 8 maybe, and I sleep from 8 until like 11, and then I wake up and I do it all again.
No, but like how long are you awake at 11?
Like a couple hours. Sometimes I'll watch a show
till 1 in the morning.
Sometimes, and then I'll be like, ooh, it's time to fall asleep again, and then I'll fall asleep again. And now that I have like pregnancy insomnia, I actually am up usually from like 4 to 6 too, so I get 3 sleeps in one night. It's very exciting.
Well, we better get started because your first sleep is
coming up.
It's on the way.
The timer starts now.
Okay. Well, I called you at 8:30 last night, and right when I started dialing, I was like, shit, I shouldn't be calling her. This is her first sleep time.
No,
it's
I was
funny
good.
because I'll text at like 11 and I'll get responses.
Totally.
I'll be like, I know you're gonna be up at some point, So
I know. I'll get
Absolutely.
Instagram DMs from you. I'll like check my phone in the morning. I'm like, why is Nina DMing me at 2:30?
You got to take care of business when you can take care of business.
All right. Well, let's get started so you can get in bed. Why don't you introduce our guest tonight? I'm really excited. She's going to be a fun conversation.
Absolutely.
Take it from
I'm
here.
super personally excited because I'm a huge fangirl of hers. I actually have been following her on
Love
Instagram
it.
for a super long time. And when she said yes that she'd be on our podcast, I was like, I'm so pumped. So we have Leigh with us tonight, and she is an ex-bikini competitor turned body positive ambassador and influencer. You can catch her friendly and bubbly personality all over the internet, encouraging people to love themselves better every single day. And with that, hi Leigh, we're so happy to have you.
Hi,
Oh
Leigh.
my gosh, I almost started crying when you were saying all that stuff. I was like, that's so nice. Oh my gosh, hi everyone. I am so glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
We're so pumped, seriously.
We are going to dive right in, Leigh, because Nina, she was starting to tell me your story earlier. And I'm like, wait, I want to hear it from Leigh. So she was like, she has a great story. So why don't you just start? Let's just lead in with like, how did you get to where you are today?
Oh my gosh. Well, that is a whole book, but I'm going to try to summarize it into maybe just a few chapters for y'all. But
okay, I love it.
I feel like a lot of women, I always struggled with my relationship with food and my body. So I was always looking for different ways that I can make myself smaller, fit into those size 2s and 0s, And so one day I was in college. I already, had tried different restrictive diets. I had tried running. I did a half marathon in college, and I was a cheerleader too. So it was all about fitting that tiny uniform. And it was one summer, it was preseason before our football season cheering that year. And I was in a dorm room with my bestie, and we were just scrolling on Instagram, and I stopped when I saw a girl from my high school in this sparkly bikini, and she was the tiniest, tiny little girl I've ever seen. And I was like, wow, I need to look like that. So I immediately went to her Instagram. I started following everyone that she was following, and I learned of this thing called bikini competitions. And I decided right in that moment that that's what I was going to do, and that was going to be me. So I am the most stubborn person you will ever meet, and when I put my mind to something, I am going to do it. So immediately I started hitting the gym, started lifting weights, and also, mind you, I had never lifted before. That was never something that was on my radar. I didn't know anything about it. So I hit in the gym. Just a few months later, I hired a coach, and I was doing my first ever, prepping for my first ever competition. And that was when I really just started to spiral, because bodybuilding is all about thriving off of restriction and just hyper focus on control. I had a coach who told me the amount of hours that I needed to spend in the gym, the specific cardio I needed to do, specific lifting, whether that be once a day, twice a day, multiple times a day, going to the gym, specific meals, not just down to the gram of food, but the type of food that I was eating. And it just became obsessive, and my entire personality, like there was literally nothing else that I could do or talk about. And so that first season, I ended up competing in 2 shows, but the first show I ever did, I ended up winning literally the entire thing because I told myself that that's what I was going to do. So that's what I did. And I literally felt nothing but emptiness after the show. I thought it was going to be so much fun. I invited all my friends to come, and just at the end of it,
even though you won, you were like, "This is the whole
thing." Literally,
wow.
Not only did I win my division, I won also the division for the newbies. But then at the end, you compete against everyone else who won their division, beat all of them, and I just looked at all my different trophies. I even got this big axe, and I was like, oh my God, like I don't even care. Like I literally don't care. I thought that this was going to be this big like firework moment. I was going to like, my life was going to change, and literally nothing happened. All I did was feel empty inside. I was hungry. I was tired. I was worn out. I was angry. Like I just only felt bad emotions. But then as I was looking at all of that, I was like, oh my gosh, but you've committed so much to this. This is you, like, this is what you have to do. And so with that win, I was like, okay, well now I got to do this again because I won, I qualified for nationals. So now you have to go to nationals. And so I launched my second half of my bodybuilding career. And I ended up getting a new coach too, because I was like, I'm going to really like ramp it up. Like I'm going to bring my A game. And it just got worse and worse and worse. I ended up going to nationals. Didn't do too well, but I made it, I did the thing. And then at the end of it all, I remember talking to my coach, like, okay, like next round, we got to do it. Because I was going down this path, and we had talked about me taking a year off going into my senior year of college, because I was like, I've committed so much of this time to the sport and I know it gives everything. But so I want to enjoy my senior year. I want to go out with my friends. I want to go drinking. Maybe I want to go, do all of that stuff.
Live a little life.
Kids do. Exactly. Yeah. I just wanted to have fun, because there were so many moments where friends would invite me out to parties, and I would get mad at them. I'd be like, well, don't you know I have to wake up at 6 a.m. to do cardio? Like, why would you even ask me that? Like, it was never, it was never even an option for me to have fun when I had this goal, like at the end of the day,
Right. Absolutely.
And so then when I had this year off, a few months in already, I just started to really fall into serious eating disorder behaviors. And what I didn't realize was I was always searching for these different diets, these different workouts, because I really struggled with binge eating and other eating disorder behaviors that kind of masked that for me. And bodybuilding stopped any of that from happening, because it really, I consider it an eating disorder in itself, because it's just such an orthorexic sport where you are only allowed to eat specific foods at specific times, and again, just really thrives off of restriction. And sometimes a lot of competitors too utilize exercise as purging behaviors. And so I saw that once I stopped and I just started binging nonstop, I was like, oh my gosh, like everything kind of flooded towards me. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is such a larger problem. You really thought that bodybuilding fixed for you, and it never did, and it never will. Like, you actually need to get real help about this that doesn't have to do with looking a certain way. It's all about like your actual well-being. And so that's when I decided to check myself in to an eating disorder facility, and that's where I did outpatient treatment for 2 months. And honestly, it was like the most pivotal moment in my journey. Like, I learned so many tools and so many things that really helped me realize, like, oh my gosh, like I just need to gain weight, be okay with it, and learn how to eat and function like a regular person, because there are so many things that your eating disorders do to you that don't make you realize that, you're kind of ostracizing yourself and isolating yourself in so many different ways. And it didn't end there, though. Of course, like, it takes years of practice and work to really instill all of those things that you learn. So it wasn't until, I would say honestly, the start of the pandemic, when the gyms shut down and I had to stay home. And I also just wasn't around like a lot of the typical triggers that I would face like in everyday life. And I had to sit alone with my thoughts and actually listen to myself and hear what I thought. And two, like just knowing that I couldn't go to the gym, like I sobbed for days, like just because the gym closed, not because of anything important. Like it was because I couldn't go to the gym. And so then I had to learn how to work on my own. I started even taking up running just to like be free and like have fun with it. Like I started trying things like yoga and body weight workouts, and I just started to become at peace with myself. And that's actually the first time that I started to just naturally lose weight and become the person that I wanted to become and not so obsessive over everything. And honestly, all of that has brought us to where we are now, because I just really am someone who preaches being unapologetically yourself and just focusing on what makes you happy, finding workouts and eating and friendship and all those different things that are going to really represent you and make you happy at the end of the day, and not having to look a certain way or be a certain way just because society makes you think that.
Hell yes.
Yeah, I love that. And you said, so one of the things that I'm very curious about was, what was the feedback you were getting along the way? Like as you were signing up for these competitions and working out and...
Is this a setup?
Why?
I'm just messing with you. Go ahead.
No, I it's too late for me, Tyler, to interpret your jokes. So like what was the feedback? Were people like, whoa, we're worried about you, this is becoming obsessive, or were you getting praised, or?
Was there praise, Leigh? Was there praise?
She's like, I won an axe, you guys.
Oh my gosh. I have to say, I got both of those things, but the big thing there is that any dissenting behavior or words that I heard, cut out of my life immediately. You were dead to me. Like there was no getting through there. And if people were saying anything, like I'm distinctly remembering too, when I was a cheerleader, there was one of the girls I remember came to me and was like, hey, by the way, like I heard two of the girls are really worried about you. Like they think that this is some like really not good behavior exhibiting, like they're thinking it's borderline eating disorder. And I remember going to the girl who came to me was a big supporter of mine, and she really looked up to me and loved what I was doing, because she was like, you're getting healthy, like you're doing a lot of great stuff. And that was a big mistake. A lot of people thought this was like health. We can get into that in a second. So I was just like, oh my gosh, they are haters. They don't get it. Like this is why like you and I like are a team, like because like, screw them. Like they don't know anything, and then I just effectively stopped talking to them. And that is what happened to any single person who said anything like that to me. And then everyone who praised me and loved what I was doing and want to see it, like besties, like you get it, like you know what it is. And then also you spend so much time not even like concerning yourself with normal people, because you're so focused on being in that bodybuilder clique and crew, like those are your people. So a lot of times too, I also remember telling my best friend that, oh, I don't even care about like keeping up with my friends. Like all I want to do is like check Snapchat and YouTube to see what Heidi Summers is doing, what Amanda Bucci is doing, what all of the popular like bodybuilders of that era were doing on social media. Like I was like, those are the only people I want to talk to. Like I was so focused on those parasocial relationships that it didn't even matter what anyone else had to say.
Well, I think that was the other thing that struck me in your story, was that what started this was your engagement in following someone on social media, right? And so we talk about that a lot. I think that social media can be an incredible tool for connection and inspiration, but there are many instances where people are on there that are actually, potentially influencing harm upon other people. And I think that it just goes back to the idea that we need to understand where these values come from, that nobody is born believing that their body has to look a certain way. It's a cultural value that's held up by our society. And then when we go on social media and see the participation in that value, in that narrative, then we want to buy into it too, right? Because we don't want to stand out and say, oh, I don't want to be a part of that belief system. But the truth is that belief system and that influence on social media does a significant amount of harm for people. I mean, you said it yourself. Like, you probably had people who were following you on Instagram in your, when you were getting your awards for your bikini competitions, and they were probably like, this is my gold standard. Like, if I could be this, then I'd be happy. And you actually had said that you were the worst emotionally you had ever been. So it's like, it's this weird, like, we see something, and because the culture makes us believe that that's the goal, we instantly think that if we can physically see it, then it instantly means that the inside of that person is thriving. And it's a huge misconception. It's a huge misconception.
It's kind of funny too, looking back at some of those Instagram posts, because you know how people joke about those couples where you can tell that they're just like not doing good because they'll have like a paragraph long caption where it's like, look, I know we fight all the time and you're always screaming at me to get off the Xbox, and we never, like, it's just horrible. And you're like, that is toxic. All of my captions were effectively that, but like with myself. They were along the lines of like, look, like, I've barely slept. I stayed up all night long just dreaming about eating a frosted sugar cookie, and I can't stop having night sweats just thinking about the food that I can eat. But you know what? It's all worth it at the end of the day. And it's like, oh my God, girl, like, get a grip. Like, it's like kind of, embarrassing in a way to look back. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I was putting this horrible, like, trauma I was clearly experiencing on the internet, and I had no idea. Like, no idea.
But I mean, I think there are people who would read your caption and be like, look at the sacrifice she's doing.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, I think that the social media and society in general is almost like hoodwinks us. It says, hey, here's what you think you want. And you mentioned something really powerful in your story. You're like, I got there. I got to the place that people look at and go, that's where I want to be. And I think a lot of people don't realize that a lot of the constructs that we believe will make us happy are complete bullshit. It's just not true. You can get to the place where you're super quote unquote successful and you have lots of money and you have this perfect body. And guess what? A lot of those people are deeply miserable on the inside and deeply insecure and don't like themselves. So if you were to say something to somebody to try and help them understand that, they're still thinking about like, well, if I was a little skinnier, if I look a little different, I would be happy. Like, what would you say to them to give them that experience now so they don't have to make the mistakes that maybe you have?
At the end of the day, my mantra is it's all about how you feel, not about how you look. And I learned that firsthand on everything that you're saying. And I know I touched on it earlier, but the biggest thing for me is I finally got down to that 0. I got down to that size 2. I was, weighing myself every single day, having to send these numbers to a coach and seeing the numbers go down on the scale. It's like, whoa, I've never weighed less in my life. And then I would look at myself in the mirror and just say, not even like, I just would wonder to myself, like, why do you still hate yourself? Like, why can't you love yourself? Why is this so hard? And I got so excited at one point because I was like, wow, I can like finally wear crop tops. Like, this is a body that is allowed to wear crop tops. And I finally purchased my first one and I put it on. And I remember being like, oh my God, you look disgusting. Like, you look horrible. And it was never, that's when I realized it was never my body. It was my mindset. Like, it only mattered how I saw myself. And if I just saw myself as someone like amazing and worthy and confident who was able to wear a crop top, no matter how she looked, like, at the end of the day, that's what would have been the thing that would have made me say that I love myself,
Yeah. That's amazing. I love that. It's so hard for people to recognize that you don't need to change anything in order to be deserving of love, both self-love and love from others.
Well, I actually promise people. I promise them when they join WeShape,
Right.
if you're here to lose weight because you think it's going to make you happy, it will not. The only thing that will make you happy is learning how to care and love and accept yourself today as your current body and circumstance are. And until you can figure out a way to get right in your mind with loving yourself and feeling your worth and unsubscribing to these values and these beliefs, it doesn't matter how much weight you lose here. So
we give that guarantee here at WeShape. So
we're working on
well, it's
it.
because too, at like the end of the day, when you have this goal, like the needle's going to always shift. You're like, oh, well, if I already did this, I could do a little more. And then you're never satisfying yourself in the other. And at the end of the day, you need to find other ways to fill your cup because, you're not, the way you look is not something that's going to bring you that happiness. And it's not going to fill your cup in the ways that you're looking for. Like, that is something like deep down, like, we got to work on that instead.
And look at, like, I always think about this too. like, I'm going to share a silly story really quick. Like, I go get waxed, right?
Yeah.
Like, remove my hair. And I'm like, I thought about it today. I was like, I want to do like a quick math calculation of like how many hours I have gotten waxed. And I was like,
Okay.
but why do I get waxed? Because our society believes that women shouldn't have hair. Okay, I subscribe to that channel. Like, actually, I subscribe to that channel for myself. I actually think people should do whatever they want with their own bodies. But I'm like, I want to wax my body so I don't have hair. But how much of my life is consumed by that? And it's all because I buy into a belief that this is how it's supposed to be.
Right.
And I think that, like, sorry for my weird story. Again, it's late. It's the middle of the night here. No. I'm just kidding. But my point is, like, when you were talking, I'm like, oh my God, like, how much time? You were like, I'm only on the internet looking at people who are bikini models, and I'm only at the gym, and I'm only counting my calories and watching the food that I eat, and I'm actually not participating in any healthy social relationships. I'm not doing anything else outside of that. And it just... It became your entire identity and your entire self. And like, if I think if we can figure out a way to zoom out and say, like, what do I give my time and attention and energy to, and how do I feel as a result of giving my time and energy to attention to that? I mean, you guys, I might stop waxing. I'm just saying,
Get it,
like,
girl.
it when you think about it, your life was absolutely consumed by it.
Oh, yes. Well, I was going to say too, like, on top of that too, waxing sounds pretty painful. I haven't tried it yet. But you know, you've been eliminating a lot of pain in your life.
I probably, how many hours, Nina? Like thousands of hours?
I don't know, girl. What are you, just waxing everything?
I mean, if you do like an hour
you doing
a
like
month,
a toes to nose
if you
situation?
do an hour a month, that's 12 hours a year.
Yeah.
And if
Okay.
I live to 100 years,
Yeah, there
You're
you
going to
go.
make it. I think you're going to make it to
1,000
100.
hours.
Katie's great-grandmother?
my great grandma was 101 and her sister was
I think you're-
104.
I think you're pulling it off.
I'm for sure
Oh my
making it to
God.
100.
Yeah.
But 1,000 hours.
Grandma
of
spent
waxing?
1,000 hours waxing.
1,000 hours waxing. So, but that's my point. I like to bring up the time thing because I don't think we think about that when we're thinking
don't.
about diet and exercise
My
and
problem
nutrition.
is I think about that in everything that I do.
Well,
I'm not going to make my bed anymore. I'm not going to do it.
No.
No,
We'll
but it
talk about that
literally
after
did
here.
become my personality because it was all that I did. Looking back on that time, I was someone who was so like all about the grind, riding the game train, like so aggressive. Whereas Nina, as you wonderfully introduced me, I'm someone who is so like bubbly and peppy, and I just love being happy. Like that, I would say at the end of the day is my MO. And I was the most unhappy I've ever been during that period of my life. Like no one knew me as the cheerleader on campus. Like I was a college cheerleader at school, but no one knew me as a cheerleader. People knew me as the bodybuilder because I just always brought Tupperware of chicken and was like angrily staring people down on a daily basis, you know? So
I know it's like, as someone who does like actually follow you and like look at all your posts and interact with them and stuff, like I think about who I know you to be today because I found you at this part in your journey. And like, it's hard for me in some ways to even imagine you prior to this. Like one of the things that made me fall in love with her on the internet is like, sometimes she takes herself to Disneyland and like goes to Disneyland on her like little self date and is like, what should I do now? And then like her people will be like, you should go do this. And she's like, okay. And then she like, it's just great. Like she lives life and she enjoys herself and she offers that to other people who follow her. And like, I think that being someone who participates in social media and representing being a young person and living life and enjoying it and sharing it and being kind is like, I don't know. I think we are attracted sometimes to things that make us feel negative on the internet. Like it's that feedback loop that kind of like feeds our algorithm and creates this like, I want this and I keep seeing it, so I'm going to keep interacting with it. And like, it's really actually truly positive. Like she's not like, if you do this, you can be like me. She's just like, I'm loving life. I want you to love life. Let's do it together. Yeah. And it's a beautiful thing. And
So speaking of that,
I so appreciate that.
We got to this point where you're like, oh, then I went to an eating disorder clinic and then I changed my life and it took me a while. Now I love myself. So like, what was that actual transition like? Because it's really hard. I mean, it's hard to go from being someone who's like, I'm an achiever, I'm going to do this thing, to like, whoa, there's so much toxicity here, to unraveling that, to facing these demons, to coming to a place of better self-love. So maybe unpack that a little more and share that part of the journey.
I know it's kind of shocking that it didn't just happen overnight, right?
right?
Yeah.
So weird.
No, it definitely, like I said, so it took a while. Like I said, it took a while. I checked myself into treatment, I want to say spring of 2018. And I wouldn't say I was like, whoa, I'm in a good place until end of 2021. It took a long, long, long time. And I want to say a big part too was during that time I graduated college and I moved to Florida for a year. And I went to school in Illinois, and I'm from Georgia, and I moved to Florida. And let me tell you, not a lot of people I knew were moving to Florida post-grad. So I didn't have my support group around me. I didn't have anyone I really knew. I was taking on like new experiences, new jobs that were just completely like foreign, and meeting these people that I wouldn't have met if I were anywhere else. And I just felt so alone, even more so, I think, than I had realized I would feel. And it was really easy to resort back to the behaviors that I had known so well for my whole life. And I wasn't really taking like accountability to in those times, because I was just like, my life kind of is sad right now. Like, I don't have any of my friends with me. I'm doing these things I don't know what to do. I'm also not doing necessarily what I want to do with my life right now. Like, what's going on? Like, I have no purpose. And that was also really difficult because, as you said, I am someone who is really driven, really goal oriented. And if I don't have a goal, a lot of times I can really feel like lost in the ether, like what's going on? I don't know. And so it wasn't until I got a job offer in Los Angeles and I moved out here where I am now. And then too, that was when, like, pretty soon after, a few months later, the pandemic hit. And it wasn't until then where I had to actually think about like my own brain and my own thoughts. And I had to sit there and acknowledge the quote unquote obstacles that I had ahead with my typical fitness goals, my fitness journey. And I think a big realization too was right before the pandemic. I had hired another coach, and I decided I wasn't going to do bodybuilding. I wasn't going to do a competition, but I needed a coach because I needed to get back in line, and I needed to straighten up because I had really messed up, because I had gained the most weight I ever had when I was living in Florida, and that was bad. And I needed to be good, which was bodybuilding, which is so crazy, knowing that I had gone to treatment, gone literally to an eating disorder center where they were like, working out is even bad, but where I was in my journey, they were acknowledged that it was just a part of kind of like who I am. And otherwise I was gonna be like, I'm gonna feel worse if I don't move my body. But I realized too, I in a lot of ways use that as a coping mechanism, specifically bodybuilding. So then when I wasn't even able to have this coach that I had hired, I was like, okay, Leigh, you actually like need to stop with the bodybuilding. Like, this isn't going to work. You need to figure out ways to move your body that are going to make you happy, ways that are going to like increase your endorphins and not make you feel like so alone, like you're going crazy in this apartment by yourself. And so that was when I kind of started actually listening to myself, because before it was really easy to hear what other people had to say and just do it. Like, that's something that I think makes me really good at being stubborn and made me like thrive in bodybuilding, because people just tell you what to do all the time, tell you how you're supposed to look, tell you how you're supposed to eat, tell you how you work out. It's like, great, I'll execute. I can do that. Great. And then when I had to say, oh, like, maybe I want to like go for a run today, even though I've always said I hated running, like right now I'm just feeling like going for a run. Like, maybe I should just try that. Maybe I'll just try going paddleboarding. Like, I got the ocean right next to me. Like, I'll just try that out. And I started just trying new things that made me excited to get out of the house. At that time, it was like, isolated activities that were safe. But the ways that just like made me happy and could make me smile and make me at peace with myself and my body. And then two, I think a big part that made me feel like a lot of anxiety, especially going out into the work world as a new graduate, being in like work environments where, just the food scenario at workplaces can be really difficult, especially for someone in recovery. Just having just the way that we always had work lunches, we always had treats at the office, which now I'm like, oh, that's great. Like, I love getting to go to the kitchen and grab myself a cupcake. But when there's just a tray of 40 cupcakes out there and you are a binge eater, it is hard to not just continually go back and back and back and like sneak everything and just feel really like stressed about that. So when I had that time alone, I was able to sit there and think a little bit more so without judgment, and take the time that I needed to like sit at my table and be like, okay, like no one's watching you. Like, you don't need to feel that added extra pressure of all of these eyeballs on you, And I know that might be like difficult, but I hope anyone else who like has gone through like an eating disorder experience, anything like that, understands like that mindset, because it's it's so hard to explain to anyone who hasn't, but having that time, I know I feel like I'm like being so long-winded right now, but, and then getting to sit in that and practice those behaviors, it was really the time for me. I always also say like the 3 T's are what did it for me. It was therapy, treatment, and time being obviously the biggest one.
You brought up 2 really powerful things there. One, I just love how you mentioned sitting there alone with your thoughts and practicing. And it's something that I feel very few people give themselves the time and space to do, to say like, okay, here's something that I'm aware that's like really taking me down. And like the moment I'm sure you sat in front of whatever it is that you were trying to, build better habits around, it was just like you're looking at it and you're hearing your thoughts and you're feeling the feelings. And it's just the moment of becoming aware of those things and aware that most of the time we're operating out of like this conditioned patterns rather than taking the time to hear it and say, hold on, let me just feel this and let me choose what I want to do rather than just react into what I want to do based on all of my old patterns. Like, that's so powerful. I think more people need to get in touch with themselves in the quiet and listen to their thoughts and realize how crazy a lot of these thoughts are, and they don't have to believe everything they think, Literally, oh my gosh, yes. Every thought that you have is not fact. It is a thought, it's a feeling, doesn't mean it's true. I think like the biggest thing too that's really difficult, I actually just recently did a YouTube video about what to do on a bad body image day. And the last and most important tip that I said is just to accept it. And I think that things like that, just sitting with it, just accepting things, just thinking about things is the most difficult for people to hear because it's the most unsexy thing and it's the least like fun and it's not an action item. It's just something like living with it. But at the end of the day, that's the most powerful one because you're letting like those feelings and emotions like wash over you and you're having to experience them. And especially as a binge eater, like that's the reason I binge eat. It's because I have a negative thought, I have a negative feeling and a negative emotion, and I don't have to think it or feel it or see it if I'm busying myself eating. If I'm busying myself doing literally anything else, I don't have to think it. And the moment I stop doing that, all those thoughts come crawling back, like rushing back, honestly. And so that's what leads you into these negative behavior cycles because you're actually having to think the things you don't want to think. So if you give yourself the opportunity to think them, you realize they're not that bad. It's so funny you mentioned that. Like, we literally were talking to our daughter before we came here, and she tends to just like, something won't go her way, and then she'll get super angry about it, and she'll lash out at us. And I mean, this is a fairly normal kid thing, but she can be a little spicy sometimes, right? And we keep trying to teach her, like, hey, when you feel upset, you don't have to solve the problem. And solving the problem doesn't mean getting what you want or telling other people, like that they caused the problem. Solving the problem means feeling what it is that you're feeling, talking about it, getting frustrated about it, going outside, taking a pause, moving your body, doing something with that to let it flow through you, and then it just goes away most of the time. If you give it enough space, it just goes away. You don't have to fix it. You just have to feel it and go through it. And I think it's such a powerful lesson for people to learn. I also want to just highlight one more thing. So thank you. I wanted to highlight one more thing that you said that I think was really interesting. And it's a mistake I think most people make too is we all think that it's the demon in front of us, the obvious demon that's going to take us down. But you said, I hired this coach, and to me, I think what most people don't realize is it's the hidden demon that's whispering rationality in your ear. That's the one that's actually going to slide you back into these habits that you maybe don't want to, you don't want to express through your life. And so I think it's just important for people to realize that, because it's so easy for us to rationalize our way back into our traumas and our dysfunctions instead of recognize that that's that demon on the shoulder whispering that rationality in your ear.
Oh, totally. Again, I feel like I'm relating everything to a toxic relationship, but it's so much easier to display it as such because I feel like, everyone's had that one toxic ex or that one toxic experience dating. And it's the same thing, except it's like the relationship with yourself. It's the relationship with your thoughts. It's the relationship that you have with all these different players in the game. And so when you realize like, oh my gosh, I think another thing too that helps is separating these things. Like there's this one book that's amazing. It's called Life Without Ed. And it characterizes your eating disorder as this person, Ed. And so when you take these like negative characters in your life and make them people and realize that it's not you that's the problem, like you aren't the problem. It's this like thought, it's this behavior, it's this action that you need to think about, you need to cope with, you need to deal with. That makes it like so much easier to conceptualize.
Wow. I like that.
That's a really good point. Well, you know what, Leigh, we have really enjoyed getting to connect with you tonight. I would love to know where people can find you because you sound like an incredibly fun social
Follow
media.
her. She's so fun.
Where can people find you?
Kind. You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Leigh Healey. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Oh, I also have Twitter, but I don't tweet as much. But also, again, Leigh Healey.
Can I ask one final question?
You
real
can
quick?
ask one final.
I felt like you have a good answer to this, Leigh. How do we all love ourselves
I'm
more?
nervous.
Oh.
Oh my. Again, I said this at the top and I'll say it again. This is the thing I will say till the day I die. Be unapologetic. Oh my gosh, unless I can't even say
Oh, you got to practice that speech before you give it.
unapologetically yourself. At the end of the day, it's you. That's all that matters. And you don't need to hide anything. You don't need to change anything. It's all about being unapologetically you.
Unapologetically.
That's
It's a great message.
Thank you so much.
That's a great message. Thank you again for being with us. I hope we can connect with you again. Let's get Nina.
gosh,
Let's get Nina to
100%.
bed.
I was like, let's go to Disneyland, Leigh. Just kidding. I got more energy all of a sudden. I'll call you when I'm in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
We'll make it happen.
Please, yes.
Well, thank you again. We had so much fun. You were the best.
Yep.
Thanks, Leigh. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
See ya. Bye.